Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1519A, and today's date is March 12th, 2018, and the title of the episode is, Why Are the Central Bank Officials Screaming and Yelling? Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, we are starting to see that governments are taking cryptocurrencies very, very seriously, and they're pushing forth regulations. Now, some regulations are good, some are bad. And the latest regulation, and this is coming from a federal judge on cryptocurrencies, which he ruled saying that those manipulating cryptocurrencies can now go to jail. Now, we need to think about this for a second, and we know that the central banking system has the ability to manipulate. We also know the individual out in Japan has been dumping a lot of Bitcoin, which when you dump that amount and you sell it off, it lowers the price. And the central banks, they can do the same exact thing, where they can use their fiat currency, they can create as much as they want, buy up Bitcoin, and then dump it to make it look like Bitcoin is volatile, or do this to any cryptocurrency to make it look like the cryptocurrency market is very volatile. And we can see a judge was out there and he made a ruling. U.S. District Judge Jack Weinstein for the Eastern District of New York ruled that cryptocurrencies are indeed commodities under the Commodity Exchange Act and therefore subject to the CFTC's Anti-Fraud and Anti-Manipulation Enforcement Authority. This allowed the case to go forward, and this also could be applied to those banks that are controlled by the, or I should say intertwined with the central bank, where they're trying to maybe manipulate the crypto market. Now, we understand they don't like the crypto market. They see that this is a threat to their business, and if it does become some type of currency, and we know there are certain states already saying that you can use cryptocurrency, Bitcoin I should say, to pay for taxes. We know that businesses are looking at cryptocurrencies to allow people to purchase their goods using this. And eventually what's going to happen is employers are going to say, hey, why don't we just pay people in cryptocurrency? Now, again, the central banks don't want people to use the crypto market because then you wouldn't be using their fiat system. And they don't want this to happen. They want everyone to use the Federal Reserve note. But as we know, the central banking system, I think at this point, is doomed. They're under threat. Why do I say this? Well, Trump put forth his tariff plan. Now, there are many countries out there that are screaming and yelling. And China already said, listen, we're not going to start a trade war. That's not what we're going to do. We'll have to wait and see, but this is what they're saying. The central banks, on the other hand, the ECB, the IMF, the Fed, they're all out there, and the corporate media included, saying tariffs are the worst thing ever. We should not do this. This is going to hurt the global economy. This is not good for our system. What they're saying, it's not good for their system. And we see right now, the central banks, they are very nervous and afraid that their system will be taken down eventually. They know and they see the writing is on the wall. The Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta President Raphael Bostic said steel and aluminum tariffs bring uncertainty that could hurt the economy's robust growth. Christine Lagarde was out there saying these tariffs will not help the global economy. European Trade Commissioner has promised that Europe would fight back against those who intimidate its trade deals. I mean, think about what they're saying right now. Think about whose system this is. This is not the people's system. And we need to remember something very, very important here. The central bank was removed from the United States by Andrew Jackson. This was back in 1836. He abolished the Bank of the United States. That's what it was called back then, arguing that it exerted undue and unhealthy influence over the course of the national of the national economy. From then until 1913, the United States didn't allow the formation of a private central bank. During that period of nearly 3/4 of a century, monetary policies were carried out more or less according to the U.S. Constitution. Only the Congress shall have the power to coin money, regulate the value thereof, Article 1, Section 8, U.S. Constitution. Not long before the establishment of the Federal Reserve Bank in 1913, President William Taft pledged to veto any legislation that included the formation of a private central bank. This was between 1909 and 1913. Soon after Woodrow Wilson replaced William Taft as president, the Federal Reserve Bank was founded in December 23, 1913, thereby centralizing the power of the U.S. banks into a privately owned entity that controlled interest rate, money supply, credit creation, inflation, and, in a roundabout way, employment, which they really can't control. It could also lend money to the government and earn interest or a fee, money that the government could create free of charge. This ushered in the beginning of the gradual rise of national debt, as the government henceforth relied more on borrowing from banks than self-financing, as it had done prior to granting the power of money creation to the private banking system. 3 years after signing the Federal Reserve Act into law, Wilson said the following: "I am most unhappy man. I have unwittingly ruined my country. A great industrial nation is controlled by its system of credit. Our system of credit is concentrated. The growth of the nation, therefore, and all our activities are in the hands of a few men. We have come to be one of the worst ruled, one of the most completely controlled and dominated governments in the civilized world. No longer a government by free opinion, no longer a government by conviction and the vote of the majority, but a government by the opinion and duress of a small group of dominant men." And this is what we have today, but it's much, much worse. He started a chain reaction, and the situation has gotten dire. And we have to go back. Henry Ford said the following: "It is well enough that people of the nation do not understand our banking and monetary system, for if they did, I believe there'd be a revolution before tomorrow morning." And Rothschild, who are the main owners of the central bank, said the following: "Give me control of a nation's money supply, and I care not who makes its laws." Because they understand, once you have the ability to create currency and governments borrow this currency with interest attached, you control them. Doesn't matter what law they put into place, it makes no difference, because you hold the debt over their head. There's no law that they can pass except one where they remove the central bank. But then again, the central bank would ask for all that money back. Here, you owe us, this trillions of dollars. You need to pay that back right now. And this is why most governments will not enact that law. So they're really not worried about that. And we could see from Q, we can see by Andrew Jackson, which is hanging on the wall of President Trump's office, that the move is to get rid of the central bank, to take it down. And this is the only way to cut off the supply of currency to a corrupt system. If the central bank stays in power, the deep state will never disappear. Yes, we can bring those to trial. Maybe some of them will run. Maybe some will suicide themselves. Makes no difference. What will happen is the system will become corrupt once again. And the only way to stop this whole thing is to reset the system. Now, Trump put forth these tariffs. Now, this is just one stage of it. Basically, what he's doing, he's forcing the hand of the central banking community. They want governments, the central banks, to make their move next. Because what he's trying to do is he's trying to maneuver and take control of the narrative while bringing down the system. But he needs to make it look like it is the central bank. And they're going to do this. And we can see the process is already in motion. This is why Rand Paul is introducing Audit the Fed, because all of this is going to hit at once. This is not going to be 6 years from now, 8 years from now. This is going to happen within a couple of months to a year. I don't think it's going to go much longer than that, because time is ticking down and something has to be done before the 4 years are up. And I'm talking about Trump's 4 years. Because if he lets this go even further, he has lost control completely. So we see right now that they are making their move now. They need to start the process. They need to break it down. They need to do all of this now, because if they don't, they will not gain control of the economic system and then the deep state. If they just get rid of the deep state and the central bank still lives on, nothing has been solved whatsoever. Yes, there'll be a couple of people that stand trial or whatever happens, but the whole system will still be intact. The whole thing will be repeated once again. And this is what we're seeing, and this is what we're watching being played out. And this is why the central banks, the IMF, the Fed, the ECB, and the rest, this is why they're very worried about these tariffs. This is why they don't want this to happen. And you're going to see they're going to make a move which is going to try to counter what he's doing right now. And this is exactly what he wants them to do. He's trapping them because he needs to turn the narrative on them, on what they're doing, that they can't fix or they can't manage the economy. He has to show through the audit bill that they are corrupt, that they've been fooling and tricking the entire world. And they're going to have to build a case. And this is what's going to be done. Now, what has to happen? Well, the audit bill has to go through. It has to be signed by Trump. The investigators have to go in. They have to investigate and pull their records. Now, of course, once the audit bill goes through, you think the Fed's just going to say, hey, come on in? No way. You're going to see a lot of things happen during this period of time. This is why he needs to maneuver and take the narrative and control the narrative and make sure that everyone is pointing the finger at the central bank. This is the move he is playing right now. Will it succeed? I hope so. Because this is what he's pushing for. Because if it doesn't succeed, guess what? We're back to where we were. We have the central bank. The deep state's going to absolutely nowhere. And the economic system, guess what? It will be transferred over to a new location, most likely China. They will control it there. We'll still be under the fiat system. Cryptocurrencies will be pushed aside. The economy will come down. Mostly will go into some type of an event, war, or whatever. And the whole thing will be reset the way they want it to be reset. This has been their plan all along. So this is what we're watching now. And we're watching it very closely because we can see that things are accelerating very, very quickly. And there's a lot of information coming out, and the corporate media doesn't know what to do with all of this. And this is why they're sticking with their propaganda, and they're just playing up emotions and things like that, because what's happening now is everything is coming in around the deep state, then eventually the central bank, and this is what we're going to see happen, and it's going to accelerate as time goes on, and it's going to close in on them faster and faster, and they're not going to know what to do. But no matter what, we will be heading towards a transition. It all depends on the central bank transition, which will be hard and fast and horrific for the people, or a softer transition we will move away from the current system that we're in right now into a new system, and they'll try to make it as easy as possible, but there will be hiccups, bumps along the way where credit might freeze. You might not have supplies in the supermarkets for a time being until we're on a new system. But once again, no matter what, you have to get prepared. You need to be prepared for what is coming. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.